In this episode, there was a good contrast between Tanya and the soldier on the battlefield we have seen before. And the difference is being X's using them. It's really sad when you think about it. The contrast between these two characters was probably the highlight of the episode, and I feel like needs much discussion. And you get into some very controversial topics if you really want to dive deep into it, but the big point of this scene, I think, is what many should really focus on, is that being X, as we know, he is someone that has focused all his attention on Tanya, our main character of this series, of Youjo Senki. And the whole reason why World War is happening in the first place is thanks to being X being very petty. But before I get into the characteristics of Being X, let's just look at how Being X has focused all his attention on Tanya, which is pretty much an atheist, while this soldier is a renowned believer of God. He truly believes in God. He is someone that actually was thinking of God right to the bitter end before he breathed his last breath. And it was a very touching scene because it just shows you how sad it really is and how Being X is as a god/being that is toying with people. As we know, Being X wants to be worshipped. He is someone that loves to be worshipped, and also questions like, why do you not believe in me, even though I'm showing you all these things? Which is why he's constantly questioning Tanya, why he's thrown Tanya in this entire situation. And when you look at how hard Being X is trying to convince Tanya that there is a God, and when you compare this dude that has never seen God or even heard God's voice, but believed in him to the very end, it's so tragic. The contrast between these two characters in the message of this episode is very powerful. And what I'm getting at is that in the scene when you see both of these characters, they're charging each other, and you hear Tanya, she's doing her speech, praying to God, and when you hear the soldier, he's praying to God as well, you see how they both are saying it. And if you look at Tanya's face, you can see where she doesn't really care. She has no emotions at all with the words she's putting into this, because she gives no shits whatsoever about God/Being X. While this soldier that is fighting on the battlefield, wanting to go home to his family, see his daughter once again, he's praying to God that everything will be fine and his homeland will be completely saved. But that did not happen. Someone that was a true believer, someone that could have had a miracle happen to save his family, that did not happen. But instead of a miracle happening for this man that's a firm believer in God, instead, Being X decides to give a miracle to someone that is an atheist. And I feel like the message here can get into some very controversial territory, so I'm not going to really go that far with it. However, I do think that the way this was done just shows you how petty and some of the things that are wrong with Being X because of the way he's focusing on Tanya, and it brings up into question like maybe why Tanya is like she is and why she was like she was in the other world before she was reincarnated. And it's really crazy the way this episode tried to display that. But also, I believe Being X was hoping for something like this from a person to be a firm believer in God and then die like he did. Because let's remember what Being X is doing with Tanya. He wants Tanya to spread the word of God. Every time she's out there fighting and all that, she will spread the word of God. And when we're thinking of spreading the word of God, we're thinking of her maybe going out in public and just speaking about God and stuff. That's probably what's all crossing our mind when we thought of that when, Being X mentioned it to Tanya. We're thinking like, oh, so she's gonna go out and just say like, God save my, my homeland and all that. That's what we probably all assumed. But I don't think that's what Being X really had in mind. I think he honestly had in mind the fact that many that are going to be participating in this world war are going to be pushed to their limits. They're going to be pushed to the point to where they will die. Many millions of people will die in this world war. And that's a given. And amongst all these millions of people that are going to die, we do know amongst these people that are going to die comes with religion and belief in God, of people praying to God that, they will be safe, their family will be safe, they'll make it back to their kids, they'll make it through this fight, whatever. Many will be praying to God thanks to the World War. And I feel like the reason why Being X set this up in the first place is because he is fully aware of what war does to people. When war happens, people pray to God. People pray for they can be fine, they can be safe, and they can have their loved ones meet up once again. And that's what I think Being X's entire objective was. It's not the fact that he wanted to just pin the world up against Tanya, which is something he's probably doing just because he wants to get back at Tanya, but he's also doing it because God will spread throughout the world. Many will mention God and talk about God and rise up and just say in their final desperate acts of life, like, God, please make sure my family is safe, and then they'll pass over and die. And so I feel like that's the main message of what was going on in this, to show us that it's not the fact that Tanya is spreading God, it's the fact, thanks to her being in this world and causing a world war, God will be mentioned a lot more, because everybody's going to be praying to Being X, because that's just what happens when your life is at, what's in, you're about to die or something. You'll pray for your family. So, very interesting stuff with this episode. Like I said, it can get into some very controversial territory, so I'm not going to dive into it too far, because it's not my go-to area of expertise. However, I do say that this episode definitely struck a chord with me, and it was something that surpassed my expectations with this series. And to be honest with you, at this time before this episode, I've said it many times, I wasn't a big fan of the overall plot of the series. I love Tanya as a character, and that's one of the big reasons why I have been watching the series. She's a fascinating character, and I love her dynamic with Being X, and I still state that to this day. However, I do have to admit, after this episode, my interest in the world now, but also the plot, has increased thanks to this information I can gather from this episode when it comes to Being X's main objective. So I do say that this episode progressed my overall enjoyment of Youjo Senki in a positive direction, and it's not just on Tanya's character anymore, it's actually the entire world. Even though I don't care about the side characters, support characters, and all that, I do, however, care about what's going on in the world now because of where the plot is going. So, good job, Youjo Senki. I think this has to be your best episode yet, and I mean, we just had to wait like an entire week, the delay of an episode, just to get this episode, so I say it was definitely worth it. I mean, I know the company that, had to do a recap, last week, it was most likely because of production issues. When there's a recap episode in the middle of a series, usually it's because production is halted or slowed down or something, and that's why recaps usually happen. So, regardless of, the slow halt or whatever for the episodes, I have to admit the wait was worth it for this episode. I do say, though, there was a little bit of issues with this episode when it came to some of the CGI moments, like the boats when they were coming in, you saw the CGI. The frames on that scene, I'm gonna be point blank with you, the frames on that CGI scene with the boats was fucking atrocious. The frames percentage, ugh. But besides that, fucking awesome episode. Like, it was a pretty fucking good episode. So, yeah, I mean, gotta admit, I did not think this episode would be this good. I mean, I've been enjoying every single episode of this series. I love, the dynamic between Being X and Tanya. But this episode surpassed my expectations and also got me interested in seeing where this war will go. Because at the end of the episode, after the credits and stuff, when we found out that this entire place has fallen to the Empire, I'm like, damn! Like, they have fallen. They set this entire route to where they have a train, like the rails, to go and supply their troops. I just love the tactics that were being used, and I gotta say, besides the scene with, Being X playing with two of these people, playing with, people that truly believe in him, and then someone that's a complete atheist, I do love also the strategy that was used in this episode, which is my second favorite scene of the episode. If that, scene with Being X or whatever, or Tanya praying to God wasn't in this episode, I think my favorite scene would have been the beginning of the episode, when Tanya and, the people are talking strategy, or just mentioning what they need to do and how they could overcome or win this war. I love that segment of this episode, possibly the second best segment of this episode, and I would love to see more of that, because there's not many manga slash anime, well, there is manga, but there's not many anime that are from light novel adaptations turned into an anime that do these scenes justice at all. I've seen a lot of light novels, turned into anime, and usually when it comes to strategy discussion, or, characters just talking about what needs to happen, usually it's rushed or completely cut out or whatever, and we just don't really get to see a lot of talks about this and see behind the scenes of what happens before an operation begins, and I'm glad that, that, you know, the actual animators and producers and all that's working on Tanya actually put this scene in, because it allows me to appreciate the objective of the episode and actually see the outcome when it actually either fails or they, you know, succeed. I'm like, damn, this was pretty awesome. They managed to plan it out, and it makes sense when they do win because of the surprise attack, all the planning for it. It just makes sense when everything goes right because they did all this planning and it didn't just come out of nowhere like they pulled it out of their fucking ass. So I'm like, damn, that's nice. So yeah, I have to believe that this is my favorite episode of Youjo Senki. I cannot wait to see the next episode next week, and I love you all so much. You have a wonderful day or night wherever you live. Please be safe. Chibi out.